Welcome to F1 ITV's Formula One driving school. I want to put you inside the head of a Grand Prix driver and more inside the cockpit. We've borrowed Damon Hill's Jordan for the day and a great number of his team. You wouldn't believe how many people it takes to run one of these cars. Man on a wheel gun here, ready to put our tyres on for the first run of the day. A laptop computer, you can't start the engine up without one of those. Many people in case we want to make suspension or wing changes, and finally an electric starter to turn the engine. It's very much a team effort, but at the final hurdle it's the driver that has to deliver.
But first I've got to get in, which needs a bit of procedure. Step over the high side, both feet in, a bit like getting in the bathtub, and slide down, remembering to grab the crutch straps on your way down, otherwise you're sitting on top of them and the mechanic can't find them. Now you just have to wait a bit like a baby while somebody straps you in. There's just not enough width or elbow room to move these seat belts, and they're so tight to stop you moving around inside the car while you're out on the racetrack. You couldn't possibly do them up. So there's 6 of those to go on, but I'm already feeling part of this car. The seat, the pedals, the footrest, the padding is all designed to fit my body, and the few seconds even I've been in here, I feel part of it. I feel cosseted, I feel safe, I feel comfortable. The seat belts are done up, the steering wheel is on, and everything is set. Around the exit of the pit lane is very narrow, very tight, and now we've got incredible acceleration. I'm braking down now to back it down, 4 gears, into second gear, take some curve on the inside and control the slide. The steering wheel's very light at high speed, there's not a problem. As soon as I turn it, I get immediate response from the car. Controlling the slide, we're into left field. Slide on the inside of the curve. Be patient. Okay, now I can see the straight ahead of me. Now if I brake too late, the car wants to snake around. I need a little bit of rear brake balance. I can barely see the corners. I'm just peeping over the top of the monocoque. You need to be down there for weight distribution, centre of gravity, but it makes it very difficult to see the corners and the curves coming up. You just can't believe the car wants to stick, but it gives you the feedback, it gives you the loading up through the steering wheel. You can immediately feel the drift. And as you go further and further, you're more and more comfortable in the car. The car becomes part of you. It reacts to whatever you're thinking about and what to do next. You can more or less think the car around the circuit. Very small movements. The smoother you are with the car, the better it handles, the more it gives you back.
Well, that was just brilliant to remember the purity of these cars. Squeeze the throttle and you get an instant response, surging forwards up to 16,000 odd revs. Brilliant. Touch the brake pedal and it builds retardation. Really, really powerful. Turn the wheel, you get an immediate response. Exactly what you're looking for. I can see why this car's going so well this year. I'd like another 100 laps straight away, please. Welcome to the grid here at Silverstone. Now the start is often your best chance of overtaking in Formula One, and of course of losing places too.
Go! Good start by Mika Häkkinen. He's through, he's passed Schumacher and Coulthard. Terrible start for the Ferraris.
There's over 17,000 brake horsepower waiting here on the grid as the 22 cars line up to depart. It's a technical procedure, and as ever, not quite as straightforward as it first seems.
I'm coming onto the grid now, down to first gear, take neutral, There's my number on the side of the racetrack. There's where my grid slot is going to be. Pull in towards the white box. Line the front tyre up with the yellow line.
Basically, there's three ways of getting these cars off the line. The first one is what I call granny leaving the supermarket. Minimum revs, minimum wheel spin, and unfortunately a big chance of stalling the engine.
Okay, we're waiting patiently on the line. The first red light is on. So I pull, I'm in first gear. The lights are building up. I'm going to put some revs on. Everybody around me is going crazy. And just a tiny bit of wheel spin.
Option 2, the boy racer. All the revs on the rev limiter, drop the clutch, spin the wheels, 50 quid's worth of rubber on the racetrack. Looks good, feels good, sounds good, but it's not the best way. Finally, the option they all have to take in the end, the control freak approach. Around 10,000 RPM from the engine, drop the clutch, a little bit of wheel spin, blend out the throttle, control that wheel spin, hook the rear tyres up and go. It's the best way in the end.
I take first. Yes, I've got first. Try to put 12,000 revs on. There's the lights. Are we ready to go? There's a nice little bit of wheel spin. Control the throttle.
Well, that's the right way to do it, but it can very easily go wrong. It's a very delicate operation.
Into first gear. Yes, I'm happy. Have I got enough revs on? Everything's going crazy around me. Oh, no.
You may say, how can these highly paid drivers stall their engine? I don't do that, but it's surprisingly easy to do in a Formula One car. If you do stall the car on the line, you're torn between two options: sticking your hand out of the cockpit to warn the other drivers, or burying your head and waiting for the impact. But there's even more to this starting business than that. There's so many other factors. How hot is the track? How sticky are your tyres? How much downforce are you running? How much fuel have you got in the car? Is it on an uphill slope or a downhill slope, the start line? You just have to get a feel for it to get it right. Now, one of the most difficult things to demonstrate to you is the level of energy that's going on inside a Formula One car. It all tends to look very calm and collected from the outside until something goes wrong. It's called G-force. Now, I don't always carry furry dice in my car, you'll be pleased to know. We put them in to demonstrate what G-force is. It's the force that will make these dice go over to the left as I take this right-hand corner. And if I brake heavily, they'll go forwards. It's the same force that'll slide your granny from one side of the car to another if you go into a roundabout a little bit too quickly.
Here's a good example, Eau Rouge at Spa. A big left-right in the bottom of the hill, about 170 miles an hour, then leap off the curb on the way out. Massive energy going on there.
Here we are in my road-going Ferrari, which is probably the fastest car on the road. But even in ideal conditions, this car will generate something around 1 G of lateral force going through a corner, and a Formula One car is 4 times that because of the downforce created and the very wide slick racing tyres.
As I hit the bump on the straight, it evacuates my lungs. I can barely breathe over that bump. Left-hand corner, my neck immediately tightens to try to hold my head in the position I want so I can balance the car on the throttle.
What does that mean in reality? 4 times the force of gravity. Your head weighs 5 kilos, for example. Maybe a Grand Prix driver's head's a little bit bigger. A crash helmet is 1.5 kilos, so 6.5 kilos times 4, 26 kilos. Imagine somebody putting a 26 kilo weight on the side of your head instantaneously.
As I break down, your head wants to go forward, your neck is fighting the weight of your head. Now, under braking, longitudinal G, something around 3.5 to 4G again in a Formula 1 car. If you watch, I'm braking heavily now, watch the dice go forward. I've had it on a coolish day where you get little drops of water in the corner of your eye. You brake so heavily with such violence in a Formula 1 car that the drops of water can actually come out of the corner of your eye and splat on the back of your visor. That's some pretty serious stopping power. Worse than that, your internal organs are also subjected to the same forces as our furry dice hair. And they're moving around inside you too, and rattling around on your, against your rib cage. And that just soaks up your energy.
Here's a good example of those energy levels here at Silverstone in just 2 corners. Heavy braking into Abbey chicane around 3.6G, leaping across the curbs, a lot of accelerative forces into bridge corner, don't lift the throttle, 4 lateral G. Let us try and put this into perspective, using the Ferrari as a reference point. Jim Vale, the team manager's driving that, 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, a top speed of 200 miles an hour. I'm going to accelerate the Jordan up to 100 miles an hour and brake down to 0 long before the Ferrari makes it to 100. Let's look at that one more time. Both cars spinning their wheels off the line. The Formula 1 car digs in up to 100 miles an hour. Hit the brake pedal now. Under 8 seconds. Brutal.
Well, we couldn't find anywhere to hang the furry dice in this, but I hope now you've got a much better understanding of the forces at work in a driver's office.
If you're a Grand Prix fan, you know that pit stops play a key role in race strategy and track position. Up to 20 men are waiting for you for a regular pit stop here in pit lane. They can win or lose you the race, but the driver plays a key role too.
Second gear across the cross a little bit. Bring it to the inside balance. It's in this time, but we must be quick through that pit lane. Pit lane, pit lane. Incredibly tight, but this is part of the race, so we've got to get through here as quickly as possible. There's the speed line. Okay, I'm heading towards my name at 120 kilometres an hour. Remember, that's faster than Michael Schumacher when he hit the wall. Okay, I'm hitting neutral, holding my foot on the brake, holding the wheel straight, keeping the revs consistent. In gear it says, and we're away. To the limiter. Where's the line? There's the white line and away. Tight corner. Control the slide.
Well, I was satisfied with that stop, but it doesn't always work so well. Here's a Jordan and a Williams pitting at the same time for race position. The Williams skidding into the pit lane, but no problem for their mechanics. Now, who's going to get away first? Clearly, it's Ralf Schumacher in the Williams. A slight problem at the back of the Jordan, and track position has been gained. But there can be other problems too. Here's some driver error from David Coulthard, arriving too quickly in a slippery pit lane, skidding past the pits. Everybody has to move. The wheelmen, the fuel men. It adds 5 or 6 seconds to the stop. This time it's Häkkinen's McLaren. They can't tighten the left rear. This would eventually cost him the British Grand Prix. Let's take another look at that pit stop in the Jordan. Coming in the pit lane now, slowing down. It's incredibly narrow and slippery, being very, very careful through there. Quite a tight chicane. Now I'm looking for the speed limiter line. There it is now, braking hard to make sure I'm not speeding. Now I'm heading for my garage of men. Braking hard, there's a guy with his hand over the right front tyre. I know where to park. Tyres are coming off, I've hit neutral, I'm watching that lollipop ahead of me. It says brakes on to keep the rear wheels from spinning. I'm holding the steering wheel straight. Now I pull for first gear, the lollipop goes up, and I'm confident to pull away. I can't see anything in the mirrors until I'm out in the pit lane, but I trust the man on the lollipop implicitly. Now I've got rid of the speed limiter and I'm regaining speed out onto the racetrack. A quick glance in the mirror to see if anything's coming, and I join the racing line now. Calculating the time lost in that pit stop is a simple school equation where E equals the time lost. First of all, A, slowing into the pit lane itself and then regaining speed afterwards, is bound to cost you around 3 seconds. The pit lane must be negotiated at reduced speed. Then the team garage zone is limited to usually 120 kilometres per hour. Time lost, 24 seconds. The pit stop itself for fuel, tyres and cleaning of the visor and radiator ducts varies. One stoppers take on more fuel, of course, than two stoppers. Time lost, one stopper, 11.5 seconds, two stops, 8.5 seconds, three stops, 6.5 seconds. Whilst it feels as if you're crawling down the pit lane on the limiter, it would still take time to negotiate the normal racetrack from pit entry to pit exit. This time has to be deducted, let's say 12.5 seconds. So for a two-stopper, the total time lost for each pit stop is A plus B plus C minus D. In this case, 23 seconds. In a 60-lap race with two scheduled stops costing a total of 46 seconds, the car must be more than 3/4 of a second per lap faster due to reduced average fuel load and fresher tyres to be advantageous. That's relatively easy to achieve, providing there are no problems. It's pressure time for the mechanics. Your life is in their hands. They must get those wheels on properly and, of course, get the fuel on board. As the car heads down the pit lane, they're all thinking, have I done my job properly?
Well, that's the theory, and it's very much teamwork, of course. You're sitting in the car, there's so much action going on around you, it's difficult to know exactly what's happening. You feel like the race is passing you by. 8 seconds will never seem longer. Now, the balance of a Grand Prix car is absolutely critical. What does that mean? It means the front and the rear tyres sliding together in unison, so you're in balance. You hear Murray and I always banging on about understeer and oversteer. Let me explain that to you. Put yourself where I am in the racing car. You want to go around a right-hand corner, you turn the wheel, but the car won't go in enough. The front tyres begin to scrub across the road. It's not steering enough, it's understeering. You have to put more steering angle in. Bad news, you're scrubbing off speed, you're damaging the front tyres, and you have to wait a long time to get on the power.
We've intentionally set this Jordan up to understeer, turning into Priory here. Look, I've got a lot of steering lock on. The car won't go where I want it to. I'm beginning to run wide again. That damages the front tyres, and you cannot carry speed through the corner.
Over several laps, of course, the more you damage those tyres, the more it understeers. It's a snowball effect. Let's see what it means in race conditions. Fisichella turns in. He's got enough steering lock on now and has to crank another quarter of a turn on the steering wheel to get around the corner, pushing the tyre sideways down the road momentarily.
There are two main ways to reduce understeer. Aerodynamically, lower the car a little bit to pick up downforce, or just simply add angle of attack to the front wing, generating more aerodynamic downforce.
Track conditions can vary during the race. Watch the Jordan mechanics alter the front wing of Damon's car to change the balance accordingly.
Alternatively, you can soften the front suspension to pick up mechanical grip, springs and shock absorbers especially. Anything to give the front tyres more grip, or you can do the opposite and give the rear tyres less grip.
Changes are small, a few percent stiffer or softer on the suspension, a millimetre or two on the ride height.
Then you have oversteer, which is on the exit of the corner normally, generated by throttle movement more often than not. Again, let me put you where I am behind the wheel. You're going through a right-hand corner. You get on the power too early, and though you're still turning right, you end up putting left-hand steering lock in. The car is turning from the back. It's oversteered through the corner, and you have to steer out and correct it.
Now we've set the Jordan up to oversteer. That means the back end's going to be too lively. I've got to be careful on the throttle. If I get on the throttle too early, the back is going to slide. I have to correct immediately. And as soon as you have to lift the throttle, you've lost time.
Understeer and oversteer can occur on the way into a corner, through the apex and on the exit. Let's watch Pedro Diniz now turning into this left-hander and almost immediately having to put right-hand lock in. That is serious turn-in oversteer. Then mild understeer through the apex.
So what can you do to fix the oversteer? Well, the first thing you can do is try and drive more smoothly, be more progressive on the throttle. But if that doesn't work, you've got to start adding rear downforce, putting elements into the rear wing, into the cascade, giving you more downforce, pushing those rear tyres down. Or, for more mechanical grip, soften the rear end a little bit, springs, shock absorbers, anti-roll bar. Or, conversely, you can give the front end less grip. That can also help the rear.
In any event, if you hit the sweet spot on the balance, you'll get a lot more confidence. You take more speed into the corners and your lap time starts tumbling.
Let's enjoy a beautifully balanced car. Hakkinen, McLaren, Spa. Heavy braking into the bus stop, totally stable. Turns in crisply, over the curbs nicely. No wheel spin on the exit, no understeer, no oversteer. Direction change good. The car is perfect. Hakkinen is very happy. Formula One cars will spin off for many reasons, and here's a few of them. Punctures, suspension failure, rear wing collapsing, or simply the driver trying too hard.
Well, let's all admit it, we actually enjoy watching the cars spin off the racetrack. Why does that happen? Well, there's two ways you can spin a Formula One car. The first is on the way in. You arrive too fast, too deep, too late on the brakes, and you go flying off the road.
Well, we've set the Jordan up to be a little bit happy as we go into this right-hander, just to demonstrate how easy it is to spin.
I got on the brakes too late, the back end of the car's come round, and there's nothing I can do about it. As soon as the pendulum swings, you're going round.
Watch the Minardi driver arrive too late, on the brakes still as he's turning in, and he's facing the wrong direction. Villeneuve in the BAR at higher speed doing exactly the same thing. Ralf Schumacher trying to outbrake up the inside on the dirty line, and again he couldn't hold the bag. Now let's watch this Jordan another time. Right-hander ahead of us, but I'm too late on the brakes now, and it just spins round. Very little warning when that happens. Let's see that from on board behind the steering wheel. And again I'm going to brake too late, but usually it's as you downshift it just finishes it off. There's just not enough grip on the rear tyres, and round she goes.
I managed to grab a handful of clutch, so I'm still in the race. I'll turn the car around to carry on.
So assuming you made it into the corner, you've still got to get through the exit.
You've got a fantastic amount of power underneath your right foot, but you have to be careful with it. If you abuse it,
Tweak it a little bit too early and you'll find your engine overtaking you as you're pointing the wrong way down the racetrack and your competitors sailing past.
And Rubens Barrichello, of course, knows as well as does Mika Hakkinen what the Finn is going to try. And he tries right up behind Rubens Barrichello.
Oh, he's going to spin. He caught the white line on the inside.
Mika Hakkinen has shot himself well and truly in both feet.
Well, that looked good fun. Let me have a go, Mika. Eddie Jordan's not watching. The tail end stepping out already. Now I'm going to get on the throttle. And the car spins round amazingly quickly. But as soon as it starts turning, your focus goes to getting it lined up, ready to continue down the racetrack.
Well, I did that for you all by myself, with the track to myself. But imagine if you're wheel to wheel with another car, or it's wet, or there's gravel or oil on the track, it becomes even more easier to do that. But you know, you've got to spin from time to time, otherwise your mechanics think you're not trying hard enough.
A little bit of fun for me at the end of the day before we put the car away, just enjoying the power of a Formula One car. Our thanks to the Jordan team, and I hope this series of Formula One driving school has given you a greater insight into the world of the Grand Prix driver.